In the winter of 2018, estate liquidator Sarah Chen discovered a collection of antique photographs while clearing out the basement of the abandoned Thornfield mansion in Providence, Rhode Island. Among the sepia-toned portraits dating from the early 1900s was an image that would haunt her long after the estate sale concluded, a tender photograph of an infant sleeping peacefully in an ornate Victorian crib, dated March 1908. The portrait seemed to embody everything beautiful about childhood innocence: the baby's serene expression, tiny fingers curled in sleep, and the soft morning light filtering through lace curtains. What made Sarah examine the image more closely was an almost imperceptible irregularity beneath the crisp white crib sheet, a small bulge that, upon magnification, revealed itself to be something that had no place in a nursery. Hidden beneath the fabric was what appeared to be a miniature ceremonial dagger, its silver blade barely visible where the sheet had shifted during the photograph's exposure. Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, a historian specializing in Victorian family life and childhood customs, was contacted when Sarah's initial research revealed that the photograph might be connected to one of Providence's most disturbing unsolved mysteries: the disappearance of the entire Thornfield family in the autumn of 1908, just months after the baby portrait had been taken. The Thornfield case had baffled investigators for more than a century, involving the unexplained vanishing of 7 family members: parents, 3 older children, 2 servants, and the infant, whose sleeping form had been captured in the mysterious photograph. The Thornfield family had been prominent members of Providence society during the early 1900s. Their wealth built upon a successful textile manufacturing business that employed hundreds of workers in mills throughout Rhode Island. Jonathan Thornfield, the family patriarch, had inherited the enterprise from his father and had expanded it into one of New England's most profitable textile operations. The family's mansion on Benefit Street served as a showcase for their prosperity. Its Gothic Revival architecture and elaborate interior decorations representing the height of Victorian domestic achievement. The infant in the photograph was identified as Gabriel Thornfield, born in January 1908, to Jonathan and his wife Adelaide. The baby had been the couple's 4th child and their first son after 3 daughters, making his birth a cause for particular celebration within the family and the broader Providence business community. Contemporary newspaper accounts had featured the Thornfield family prominently in society pages, describing elaborate christening ceremonies and social gatherings that honored the newest addition to one of the city's most respected dynasties. Dr. Morrison's analysis of the photograph using modern digital enhancement technology revealed disturbing details that had been invisible to early 20th century examination. The object beneath the crib sheet was clearly artificial rather than a natural fold in the fabric, its shape and positioning suggesting deliberate placement rather than accidental presence. Advanced imaging techniques revealed intricate engravings along the blade's surface, symbols that appeared to combine Christian iconography with far older spiritual traditions that predated European settlement of North America. The discovery of the hidden dagger raised immediate questions about why such an object would be placed in an infant's crib and who might have been responsible for its concealment. Victorian parents were notoriously protective of their children's safety, making the presence of a sharp object in a baby's sleeping area particularly puzzling. The careful placement beneath the sheet suggested that the dagger had been hidden intentionally, possibly to serve some protective or ritualistic purpose that was never documented in the family's surviving papers. Dr. Morrison's investigation into the Thornfield family's background revealed a complex history that extended far beyond their public reputation as successful textile manufacturers. Jonathan Thornfield's ancestors had been among the earliest European settlers in Rhode Island, arriving in the 1640s as part of Roger Williams's colony that had been established as a haven for religious minorities fleeing persecution in other parts of New England. The family's roots in religious nonconformity had created a tradition of spiritual experimentation that continued through subsequent generations, often blending conventional Christianity with folk practices that had been brought from Europe or learned from interactions with local Native American communities. Family genealogical records revealed that the Thornfields had maintained connections to spiritual practices that existed outside mainstream Christian traditions. Several ancestors had been accused of witchcraft during the Salem witch trials of the 1690s. Though charges had been dropped, when the family relocated to Providence. Later generations had been involved with spiritualist movements of the 19th century, attending seances and participating in occult societies that sought to communicate with deceased spirits and explore supernatural phenomena. The investigation revealed that Adelaide Thornfield, Gabriel's mother, had been particularly interested in protective magic and folk remedies that were believed to shield children from spiritual harm. Her personal correspondence, discovered among family papers preserved at the Rhode Island Historical Society, documented her extensive research into traditional practices for safeguarding infants from malevolent supernatural influences. Adelaide had consulted with practitioners of folk magic from various ethnic communities in Providence, seeking knowledge that could protect her family from forces that conventional medicine and religion seemed unable to address. If you're as intrigued as we are by these secrets of the past, consider subscribing to not miss any of our future investigations. Adelaide's letters to her sister in Boston revealed growing anxiety about supernatural threats to her family's welfare during the months following Gabriel's birth. She had become convinced that the family was being targeted by malevolent spiritual forces, possibly as a result of their business success or their ancestors' involvement with unconventional religious practices. Her correspondence described disturbing dreams, unexplained sounds within the mansion, and a persistent sense that unseen entities were observing her family with hostile intent. "I cannot shake the feeling that we are being watched by forces that wish us harm," Adelaide wrote to her sister in a letter dated February 1908, just weeks after Gabriel's birth. The servants report strange occurrences throughout the house, doors that open by themselves, cold spots that appear without explanation, and shadows that move independently of their sources. Most disturbing are the sounds that seem to come from Gabriel's nursery during the night hours, whispers in languages that none of us can identify, but that fill me with inexplicable dread. The letters revealed that Adelaide had consulted with Maria Santos, a Portuguese immigrant who practiced traditional folk magic within Providence's growing ethnic community. Santos had apparently identified specific supernatural threats targeting the Thornfield family, and had recommended protective measures that included the placement of consecrated objects near vulnerable family members, particularly the infant Gabriel. The ceremonial dagger discovered beneath Gabriel's crib sheet appeared to be one of these protective talismans, blessed according to rituals that combined Catholic saints with pre-Christian spiritual traditions. Dr. Morrison's research into Maria Santos revealed that she had been a respected practitioner of traditional Portuguese folk magic, specializing in protective rituals that had been passed down through generations of women in her family. Santos had emigrated to Providence in 1895, bringing with her knowledge of spiritual practices that had helped Portuguese communities survive centuries of political and religious persecution. Her reputation within Providence's immigrant communities had attracted clients from various ethnic backgrounds, including established American families who had exhausted conventional resources in addressing supernatural problems. Police records from 1908 revealed that Santos had been questioned extensively following the Thornfield family's disappearance, though no charges had been filed against her. The investigation had focused on her role in providing spiritual services to the family, with particular attention to any rituals or practices that might have contributed to their mysterious vanishing. Santos had maintained that her work with the Thornfields had been purely protective in nature, designed to shield them from spiritual attack rather than to invoke harmful supernatural forces. The police investigation into the Thornfield disappearance had been one of the most extensive missing persons cases in Rhode Island history, involving searches of the family mansion, the textile mills, and surrounding areas where the family might have traveled. No trace of the 7 missing individuals had ever been discovered, despite rewards offered for information and extensive publicity in regional newspapers. The case had remained active for years, with periodic reviews whenever new investigative techniques became available, but no substantial evidence had ever emerged to explain what had happened to the family. Contemporary newspaper coverage of the disappearance had emphasized the mysterious circumstances surrounding the family's vanishing. The Thornfield mansion had been found in perfect order, with no signs of violence or hurried departure. Meals had been prepared but left uneaten, clothing had been laid out for the following day, and personal valuables had been left undisturbed. Most puzzling was the discovery that the family's luggage remained packed in their bedrooms, suggesting that they had been prepared for travel but had departed without taking their belongings. Dr. Morrison's analysis of the disappearance timeline revealed that the family had vanished sometime between the evening of September 15, 1908, and the morning of September 17, when servants returning from their weekly day off had discovered the empty mansion. The two-day window had allowed sufficient time for the family to travel considerable distances, but extensive searches of transportation records had failed to locate any evidence of their departure from Providence by train, ship, or automobile. The investigation had been complicated by the family's extensive business and social connections, which created numerous potential explanations for their sudden departure. Jonathan Thornfield had been involved in complex business negotiations that might have required urgent travel, while Adelaide's interest in spiritual matters had connected the family to various occult practitioners who might have influenced their decision to relocate. However, none of these explanations accounted for the family's failure to communicate with business associates or extended family members in the months following their disappearance. Dr. Morrison's research revealed that the Thornfield case had attracted the attention of early 20th century investigators who specialized in supernatural phenomena. The American Society for Psychical Research had conducted its own inquiry into the family's disappearance, seeking evidence of spiritual forces that might have been responsible for their vanishing. The Society's report, filed in 1910 but never published, had concluded that the family had likely been translated to another plane of existence through supernatural means, though the investigators had been unable to identify the specific mechanisms responsible for such a transformation. The photograph of baby Gabriel had become a central piece of evidence in theories about the family's fate, with the hidden dagger interpreted as either protective charm or ritual implement, depending on the investigator's perspective. Supernatural theorists argued that the dagger represented Adelaide's successful efforts to shield her family from spiritual attack, possibly enabling their escape to a spiritual realm where they could exist safely beyond the reach of malevolent forces. Skeptics contended that the dagger was evidence of the family's involvement in dangerous occult practices that might have contributed to their deaths or disappearance. As we delve deeper into these mysteries, we invite you to join our community of explorers of the inexplicable. Subscribe and become part of the search for truth. Dr. Morrison's investigation expanded to include research into similar cases of family disappearances that had been associated with protective magic and supernatural phenomena. Her analysis revealed several comparable incidents throughout New England history, typically involving families who had consulted with folk practitioners in response to perceived spiritual threats. These cases shared common characteristics: successful families who had aroused supernatural enmity, consultation with traditional magical practitioners, implementation of protective measures, and subsequent mysterious disappearances that left no physical evidence. The pattern suggested that the Thornfield case might represent part of a larger phenomenon involving the intersection of material success, spiritual vulnerability, and protective magic. Families who achieved significant prosperity sometimes attracted attention from malevolent supernatural forces that viewed human success as a form of spiritual debt requiring payment. The protective measures recommended by folk practitioners might successfully shield such families from harm, but the process could result in their translation to spiritual realms where they could exist safely while remaining invisible to ordinary human perception. Modern analysis of the ceremonial dagger using X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy revealed that the blade had been crafted from silver that contained trace elements consistent with European mining regions, suggesting that the implement had been either imported from Europe or created using materials that had been brought by immigrants to America. The engravings on the blade showed evidence of hand craftsmanship that was consistent with traditional metalworking techniques preserved among Portuguese artisans who specialized in creating religious and magical implements. The symbols engraved on the dagger combined Christian imagery with pre-Christian motifs that had been preserved in Portuguese folk traditions despite centuries of Catholic influence. The blade featured crosses and saints' names alongside symbols that appeared to represent natural forces and spiritual entities that had been worshipped in Iberian Peninsula before the arrival of Christianity. The combination suggested that the dagger had been created according to syncretic traditions that had successfully integrated different spiritual systems into comprehensive protective practices. Dr. Morrison's consultation with experts in Portuguese folk magic revealed that the dagger represented a type of protective implement known as a faca benzida, a consecrated blade that was blessed according to specific rituals and placed near vulnerable individuals to ward off spiritual attack. The creation of such implements required extensive knowledge of traditional protective formulas and access to properly consecrated materials, suggesting that Maria Santos had possessed significant expertise in Portuguese magical traditions. The investigation revealed that faca benzida implements were typically created for specific individuals and charged with protective energy through elaborate blessing ceremonies that could last for several days. The rituals required the participation of experienced practitioners who could invoke the protection of Catholic saints, while also appealing to older spiritual forces that were believed to maintain cosmic balance. The completed implements were considered sacred objects that carried powerful protective energies, capable of shielding their beneficiaries from various forms of supernatural harm. Dr. Morrison's research into the subsequent history of the Thornfield Mansion revealed that the property had remained uninhabitable for several decades following the family's disappearance. Multiple attempts to sell or lease the building had failed due to persistent reports of supernatural activity that made long-term occupation impossible. Residents and visitors had reported unexplained sounds, temperature variations, and visual phenomena that seemed to be concentrated in the nursery where Gabriel's photograph had been taken. The mansion's reputation for supernatural harassment had made it a subject of interest for paranormal investigators throughout the 20th century, with numerous teams attempting to document and explain the unusual phenomena reported within its rooms. These investigations had consistently detected electromagnetic anomalies, temperature fluctuations, and acoustic effects that could not be attributed to natural causes or building defects. Most intriguingly, several investigations had captured audio recordings of what appeared to be infant vocalizations coming from the nursery, despite the room being empty of any living occupants. Modern paranormal investigators, equipped with advanced detection equipment, had documented phenomena in the nursery that seemed to correspond to the location where Gabriel's crib had once stood. Digital audio recordings had captured sounds resembling a baby's breathing and soft cooing, while thermal imaging had detected warm spots that matched the dimensions of an infant's body. The phenomena appeared to be strongest during nighttime hours and seemed to intensify when investigators brought baby-related objects into the room. The investigation revealed that several psychic mediums who had visited the mansion had reported sensing the presence of the Thornfield family members, including baby Gabriel, existing in a state between physical and spiritual reality. According to these accounts, the family had not died in any conventional sense, but had been translated to a spiritual dimension where they continued to exist while remaining connected to their former home. The protective magic implemented by Adelaide and Maria Santos had apparently succeeded in shielding the family from supernatural attack while enabling their transition to a safer plane of existence. Dr. Morrison's research into historical records of spiritual translation revealed that such phenomena had been documented in various cultures throughout history, typically involving individuals or families who had achieved spiritual protection through magical or religious practices. The concept of translation, physical beings transitioning to spiritual existence while retaining their consciousness and identity, appeared in Jewish mystical traditions, Christian ascension narratives, and indigenous spiritual practices from around the world. The investigation expanded to include consultation with contemporary practitioners of Portuguese folk magic who could provide insight into the protective rituals that Adelaide Thornfield had apparently employed. These consultations revealed that the type of family protection sought by Adelaide was considered one of the most challenging forms of folk magic, requiring not only extensive knowledge of traditional practices, but also significant personal sacrifice on the part of the practitioner and beneficiaries. According to traditional understanding, family translation required the voluntary surrender of physical existence in exchange for spiritual protection that could extend across generations. The Thornfield family's disappearance might represent their successful achievement of such protection, with their physical forms dissolved while their consciousness was preserved in a spiritual state that allowed them to continue existing as a family unit beyond the reach of malevolent supernatural forces. The investigation revealed that the ceremonial dagger found in Gabriel's crib had likely served as an anchor point for the translation process, its consecrated silver providing a conduit through which spiritual protection could flow to the infant. The placement of the dagger beneath the crib sheet suggested that Adelaide had understood the importance of maintaining direct physical contact between the protective implement and her vulnerable child during the crucial moments of the translation process. Modern attempts to locate traces of the Thornfield family using psychic investigation techniques had produced intriguing but inconclusive results. Several mediums had reported successful communication with family members, including Gabriel, who appeared to have aged normally despite existing in spiritual form. According to these accounts, the family continued to inhabit their mansion on a spiritual level, remaining connected to the physical location while existing in a dimensional state that was normally invisible to human perception. The investigation revealed that Gabriel, despite being an infant at the time of the translation, had apparently retained his identity and continued his development within the spiritual realm. Psychic communications attributed to him suggested that he had grown to adulthood, while maintaining memories of his physical existence and awareness of his family's circumstances. The protective dagger that had been placed in his crib had apparently established a permanent connection between his spiritual and physical existence that allowed him to influence events within the material world. Dr. Morrison's analysis of the photograph itself revealed additional anomalies that had not been apparent during initial examination. Advanced digital processing techniques detected subtle variations in the image's light patterns that seemed to suggest the presence of additional figures within the nursery, possibly family members who had been present during the photograph's exposure but had existed in a partially translated state that made them invisible to the camera's normal recording capabilities. The investigation revealed that the photograph might represent more than historical documentation. It could serve as a window into the spiritual dimension where the Thornfield family continued to exist. Several psychic investigators had reported that prolonged contemplation of Gabriel's image had enabled them to perceive the family's spiritual forms and establish limited communication with the translated beings. The photograph apparently functioned as a bridge between physical and spiritual reality, allowing sensitive individuals to access the dimensional state where the family had taken refuge. The discovery of additional family photographs in the mansion's basement revealed that the portrait of baby Gabriel was part of a series that documented the family's gradual spiritual transformation during the months preceding their disappearance. Later images showed subtle but progressive changes in the family members' appearances, with increasing transparency and ethereal qualities that suggested their ongoing translation to spiritual existence. The photographs provided a unique documentary record of the translation process as it unfolded over several months. Dr. Morrison's investigation revealed that the Thornfield case represented one of the most thoroughly documented examples of family spiritual translation in American paranormal history. The combination of photographic evidence, historical records, and ongoing supernatural phenomena associated with the mansion provided unprecedented insight into the mechanisms by which protective magic could enable human beings to transcend physical existence while preserving their consciousness and family relationships. The case also demonstrated the effectiveness of traditional folk magic in addressing supernatural threats that conventional religion and science were unable to handle. Adelaide Thornfield's consultation with Maria Santos had provided access to protective knowledge that had been preserved within Portuguese immigrant communities, enabling the family to achieve spiritual safety through methods that had been tested and refined over centuries of practical application. Modern researchers studying the Thornfield case have concluded that the family's translation represents a successful resolution to their supernatural predicament, though the methods employed required complete sacrifice of their physical existence. The protective dagger found in Gabriel's crib serves as evidence of the careful preparation and spiritual knowledge that made their escape possible, while the ongoing phenomena in the mansion confirm that their translation was successful rather than representing death or disappearance in any conventional sense. The investigation revealed that the Thornfield case had broader implications for understanding the relationship between material success and spiritual vulnerability. Families who achieved significant prosperity might unknowingly attract attention from malevolent supernatural forces that viewed human accomplishment as a form of spiritual debt requiring payment. The protective measures available through traditional folk magic could provide effective defense against such threats, though the most powerful protections might require sacrifices that fundamentally altered the nature of human existence. In her concluding analysis, Dr. Morrison reflected on the profound courage demonstrated by Adelaide Thornfield in pursuing spiritual protection for her family, despite the ultimate costs involved. The photograph of baby Gabriel sleeping peacefully with a consecrated dagger hidden beneath his crib sheet represented both a mother's desperate love and her willingness to sacrifice everything familiar to ensure her family's spiritual safety. The image served as a testament to the power of protective magic, while documenting one of the most remarkable spiritual transformations in recorded history. The story of the 1908 baby portrait reminds us that appearances can be deceiving, and that the most innocent-seeming images may conceal evidence of extraordinary spiritual events that challenge our understanding of life, death, and the nature of family bonds. Gabriel Thornfield's sleeping form, captured for eternity in sepia tones, continues to serve as a bridge between our physical world and the spiritual dimension where his family found the safety that eluded them in mortal existence. Perhaps most remarkably, the protective dagger that caused Dr. Morrison to investigate the photograph in the first place represents the successful achievement of a mother's deepest wish, to shield her children from harm at any cost. Adelaide Thornfield's willingness to embrace spiritual translation rather than allow her family to fall victim to supernatural persecution demonstrates a form of parental love that transcended the boundaries of physical existence itself. The past guards secrets that challenge comprehension, and what we've uncovered in the shadows of that peaceful nursery reveals that some families choose spiritual translation over physical destruction, finding ways to preserve their bonds across dimensional boundaries through the power of protective magic and sacrificial love. Perhaps the real question isn't what happened to the Thornfield family, but whether we have the courage to recognize that some forms of protection require sacrifices that extend far beyond our ordinary understanding of life and death. The true nature of this mystery remains in the shadows, but we want to know your opinion. Use the comment section below and tell us what you believe. If you are fascinated by unraveling the secrets behind our darkest histories, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications, for there is much more to be unmasked.